48-hour art check, round 129.
Boom.
So have you seen Spider-Verse yet?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Has she seen
Really
it?
good. Kind of blew my mind.
I love that show. 48-hour art check, round dang it. 129.
You hit the button again?
I forgot to mute the thing.
Ah, that's okay. We like Spider-Verse. That's what you guys have secretly found out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I did actually see it, and you had recommended it earlier, and I'm glad you did. Scott, too, was like raving about it, and pretty much everyone I knew who was a cartoonist was like, this is a really good Spider-Man movie. And I'm like, really? Because,
yeah,
it's like an alternate universe thing, and I had seen like a preview clip at Adobe Max, so I was like, well, it looks pretty cool, but I don't know. But then it's a whole different experience.
Yeah,
so
even
good.
like the how it should have ended guys. No, the honest trailer guys, they were like, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. Seriously, how did they make this movie good?
Yeah.
Because like it shouldn't be good because of like, anytime you put that many characters in a movie, anytime you have like weird multiple dimensions or whatever,
yeah,
it's just like a guaranteed bad movie. But that movie's legit good.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it made me really proud of animation too because it's got its own style. There's no movie like that out, which is great. And so yeah, it was. Anyhow, yeah. So very good stuff. Cool. Should we get into it? Should we get into our check?
Let's check. Let's do it.
All right, let's check your stuff before we wreck your stuff.
All right. Shotgun shells are bad for my health. So I have gotten back into kind of knocking out videos, and I am really, really liking like the setup that I've got for tutorials. It's so much faster. So I get something in my throat. Once I get everything set up, it's really faster. So I've got several kind of shorter ones and then like a longer one. But that's basically what I've been doing. That and just sketching a little bit, but nothing worth showing. So
sweet.
Yeah. So if you want to see some slightly more advanced stuff in After Effects, you can check out those videos.
So exciting.
How about you?
So I did exactly what I was expecting. I finished up the page. I scanned it, cleaned it up. When I scan it and clean it up, that means I have to like basically break it down into pieces, like four corners, and then kind of stitch it together and up the levels and stuff like that. But this is one thing I'll say too, to anybody who's like kind of downplays the value of doing hand lettering. Just as an example, like, this went really quick, the cleanup process, a lot quicker than if I had to like add text boxes and then type at this stage, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't drawn anything I don't have to draw, which is great.
Right.
So like anything behind the text boxes, I've already avoided like and cut out that amount of work. And I'll just use this as an example, but it's like if you look at the little like the 100 Days Anthology #2 work that I did, it's like it was very methodical. It took time, but I mean, it's off my plate, and it was off my plate the second I finished. Pretty much like 2 days after I finished the last page, because I just had to scan it and clean it up. But like I said, the scan, cleanup, that whole process because of hand lettering is like a million times quicker. So I highly recommend more cartoonists kind of delve into the world of hand lettering, because it sounds cooler in theory, but it actually cuts work, which is weird. I never would have expected that. Maybe not for everyone, but for me, I've found it actually cuts out time, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I don't write that way yet. So I need to like see what I've decided to draw eventually and then pare down my text. Cause I want to do like inside out writing, but I end up writing like way more and then paring it down. I still haven't gotten to that yet, but yeah. So, challenges for me, basically normal stuff, nothing. Yeah. Just life and driving around, shoving plastic grocery bags in my leather jacket to make sure that I Don't have to sit on a wet motorcycle seat when it rains, which it's been doing all week. Stuff like that. There's not. I don't have anything interesting to say for the challenges. I'm still kind of just taking it easy this week and prepping for leaving in a
love
few days to the conference and whatnot. But yeah, so no real challenges. How about you?
I'm excited to see, like the conference and stuff, and I think we'll be trying to do like a live thing from there, which is kind of exciting. So I
Yeah,
hope that works when we try it. Um, but yeah, like my challenges are very similar. It's kind of just like a meh week. Like
yeah,
I feel because I have really challenging weeks, this one just doesn't seem like as tough as other ones.
yeah,
Um, it's time management stuff, and then mostly um, right now it's just like the challenge of really trying to keep my mind on the goal of finishing the book and not letting my brain run away with like, what do I do with the Kickstarter? What do I like? I start jumping ahead, and that can actually cause me to like drop the ball at like the least. Like the last time you want to be thinking about that stuff is when you're like right at the finish line.
right.
You don't want to be like, well, what medal will I get? And like, will I stand on a thing? Like, no, you just get to the finish line at
Yeah,
this point. And then like when you're at the finish line, then you can decide like how you're gonna PR it or whatever, like
yeah,
but it is hard at this point to kind of fight that. It's been interesting because it's just been like really starting to like a friend of mine sent me like booth information for WonderCon, and I was like, should I book a booth? And then I'm like, no, I'm literally not going to focus on any convention type stuff because at this point the book's not even a reality yet.
yeah,
It's almost there, and if I keep it and make it a reality, then I can focus on all the other stuff. And hell, if I didn't register in time to get a booth somewhere, I'll just do it the next year with a book,
yeah.
as opposed to so that's, yeah, sorry, total rant, but
No,
but
yeah, that makes sense.
that's been a bit of a struggle. But like it's not a bad struggle. I like that struggle. I wish I were having that more often, because that mean I was close to finishing big projects more often.
Yeah, right. And I mean, yeah, it doesn't always have to be bad stuff to be a challenge. It's just a challenge, It's just whatever. So, uh, plans for me. I'm going to knock out the rest of that animatic, the second half of that. So I've got the first part where he opens his mouth and reveals a skeleton, and then I'll have the skeleton open and reveal the bug, and then I'll have the bug splat and have the camera fly around. So I'll get to that point, and then just any last minute stuff. I've got to wrap up the semester and take off, and so I will likely be doing like some marathon grading nights, because normally I have like the week at the end of the semester to grade, and I don't, because I'm probably driving to Salt Lake on my bike and then flying out. So
Man,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, it'll be kind of crazy. I don't know. It's rained for the past couple of days, and I'm like, driving a couple miles in the rain isn't a big deal, but driving for 3.5 hours in the rain is just miserable. Even if you've got gear, it's just not fun. So so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Just pray that it doesn't rain for me on Wednesday. That's my main goal.
Oh man.
Anyway, yeah. So how about you? What are your plans?
So I'm planning to thumbnail the next page for quarterly stories, and then this Sunday is a pretty exciting NCS meeting, and so my wife is actually going, and I'm taking her kind of as like a date there, and I think it'll be fun to show her like this weird little group of cartoonists with our weird little rituals. um, it's going to be fun. So, but yeah, I definitely want to probably have like the lettering and panel borders done by Monday as well. So I'll be ambitious and try to aim for both.
Cool.
One thing I will say, I had to like mow my back lawn as well as my front lawn, and my back lawn isn't really much of a lawn. It's just a lot of dirt. Like we've never had the time or the money to kind of redo the backyard since we bought the house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So it's just like mostly just weeds and stuff, but you still, it gets to this point where you just have to like mow it. And then there's been so much rain that it's starting to kind of become a lawn, which is weird. Um, so after mowing both that, which is a lot more ground than our front yard, I started getting pain in my hands. And it just dawned on me like, wow, that's got to be like murder on your hands, like riding a bike long distance. Like just the vibration you get on
Yeah,
a lawnmower just starts messing up like your palms. And I was
right.
like, do your hands just feel like numb, just blocks of like meat when you're done like riding a long trip on a bike, or does it like absorb the shock better? I don't know.
I've heard somebody describe, because one time I did 960 miles in 20 hours, and that was a lot. But one time I did that, and somebody described it as death by butt, or death butt first, and I think that's more accurate. Like your hands, there's things that you can do where you're resting your hands on the, and you're using the weight of your arms to, instead of the grip of your. There's some of that. There's this thing called a grip buster, which is like this little curly cue that you wrap around, and it rests underneath the pad of your hand, so that you can just kind of like use your arm rather than your grip. Because if you're using your grip, it man, it burns pretty fast.
Well,
There's a lot of things like that. Like you pay a lot of attention to like the tension in your shoulders and in your lower back, because if you're tensing up, which is, it's hard not to do. Yeah,
yeah,
it can be pretty taxing. But I mean, if you just imagine like just trying to stay balanced with like 100-mile-an-hour winds beating on your head and chest, I mean it's a pretty good. It's pretty taxing. It's not a leisurely drive, but it's fun. I really like it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds exhilarating, but it also just sounds like murder on the bones.
yeah.
Like, um, oh, Squatchy's in the chats and said,
Hey,
"What's up? What's
what's
up,
up, man?
Squatchy? Thanks for joining us, man." Um, yeah. So, you want to jump into the topic?
Yeah,
All right. Let's do it. We're gonna continue the topic from last week. Do you want to kind of
yeah.
intro it?
So today's topic is regrets part two, and so we talked about on the last episode. We talked about kind of why you should live without regrets and some of the decisions that we've made to do that. And I think in this topic, or in this episode, I think we're going to just maybe tell a story or two of some of the regrets that we've got. And I think we kind of put those regrets into two categories. One is kind of artistic regrets of basically like both of us feel like we wish we would have started earlier. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably pretty common for most people that have found what they feel is their calling. I think everybody feels like, oh, I wish I would have acted on that earlier. And the other one is kind of just personal relationships. And I don't know if I want to necessarily like get into that, but I can kind of allude to it. Those are really the only two things I regret. I mean, everything else I've made good decisions. I've made mistakes, but I've pretty much been pretty active and acted, as I've been doing that. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. I'll just start with like my artistic one. We kind of touched on this at the end, but I think we were gonna get a little more thorough with it. So, um, for me, like I had this block, like the majority of my life, where I adored comics, like from a really early age, like most cartoonists, and I think the love like kind of grew from just like picking up Calvin and Hobbes and like reading those books, and then kind of going from there to like getting really into Sunday comics, and then getting in my first floppy comics, and then from there to like graphic novels and indie stuff, and like just this love growing and this desire and this kind of like knowledge that like this is something I should be doing, just being something I kind of lived with for a long time, but because I loved it and respected it so much, um I would I did zines in high school, One that actually got me suspended because it had a picture of my vice principal going into a seizure in it. um, but uh, but it's like, they were just these silly little zines and they were photocopied and stuff. But I feel like I wish I had taken a real serious crack at creating fully realized comics. Even if they were short, even if they were zines, even if they were whatever. I wish I had kind of started that as a teenager and not gotten locked into this habit of starting like the first 2 pages and it not being good enough, and then just kind of assuming or guessing that at some point I'd reach a certain level of skill, or I would meet a certain person who would like open a gate and be like, "Welcome to comics, you've
Yeah.
made it, kid." You know,
Yeah.
um, and it's such a naive thing when I think back on it, and I feel like if I met myself when I was like 12 and like obsessed with comics and trying I'm putting in quotes to like seriously draw comics, I would be lecturing myself like, dude, just do it now. Like there's no reason to wait. And you're 12, so by the time you're 16, you could have legitimately good comics. And then by the time you're 18, hell, you might even have like a whole series of independent comics. By the time you're in your 20s, like you could be working for major publishers. I wish I had kind of known that. I say that with the full knowledge that, like, I think there's a lot of that kind of thing that as an adult, when you're mature, you would tell yourself as a teenager, and as a teenager you'd just be like, oh, whatever, you don't know anything, you're not
Yeah.
me. um but yeah, so that's kind of my regret on starting later. It took me till I was in college to just kind of have this realization that like there's no trick to it. Like it's just work. And if I ever want to be a guy with a published comic, I have to actually finish a decent published comic and then put it out there.
Yeah.
And the second I did that, I feel like I was rewarded. And it's surprising how much like just doing the work leads to rewards, whether they're like massive rewards or just small ones. um it's just one of those things of like, I wish that had unlocked a little earlier.
Hmm.
uh, you know yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
mean, I think I've told my story, a dozen times. And so I'll just touch on it for a few seconds and then focus on like one aspect. But um, basically, as a kid, I drew a little bit enough to where people like recognized me as an artist, and then I got scared of like drawing something bad because that's what I was known for, and so I just let people believe that I was still an artist, and I stopped drawing. Um, and I drew a little bit here, there over the years, but never anything serious until I was like 32. And so then I started drawing that first web comic, and it was terrible, and it was good, and there were good and bad parts. So there's kind of that. I kind of wish I would have not wasted, I don't know, 27 years of my life not
yeah,
drawing things. But I think the main regret that I have, because even in that artistic journey, I was still scared to show things publicly. I was still, like terrified of making a mistake or being found out as somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, or, drawing an anatomy wrong. Because even people who have never studied anatomy can look at a person and be like, that leg is weird, or whatever. And so I think my biggest regret is that it has taken me so long to get to the point where I accept that like everything I make is going to be flawed, and that's
yeah,
that's just part of it. Like, and that's actually some of that is what adds some of the humanity to it and everything. And so, what has happened is as I've kind of gone through this journey, like a lot of what kept me away from ultimately what I really should be doing with my life is fear of failure. Because I can do marketing pretty well. I can do art direction, and product photography. There's a lot of skills that I could continue to make a living off of, that I lived
yeah,
off of for 15 years, and great experiences, and I don't regret those at all. but I was never risking anything doing them. It always, it was always like whatever. And so, when I got to the point where I realized like what was keeping me from doing what was really fulfilling was that it was scary,
Yeah.
because I felt like I wasn't good enough. I didn't belong there or whatever. And so I was scared to do it. Or when I did it, I was scared to show people.
Yeah.
Um, that I just wish I would have come to the realization of what imposter syndrome is, that I have it once I have named it and I've learned to deal with it. It hasn't gone away, but now it has no or very little power, over my actions. It's still kind of in the back of my mind all the time, but like once I came across that, that's my biggest regret is that I didn't just, I'm not a scared person. I'm not like a timid
Yeah.
person. I'm pretty bold. I'm pretty ballsy. I kind of do whatever I want, in most situations. And it's just in that one aspect of my life that I really regret the fact that I allowed my fears, of the unknown and of failure to kind of like get in the way of really what I should be doing, because I think that's the main thing. I mean, I could have been drawing in my early 20s,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've gained whatever skill I may or may not have in the last, what is it? Yeah, so in the last about 7 years. And I
Yeah.
mean, so I can't even imagine where I would be if that was 17 years or if that was
Yeah.
25 years. So that's kind of that's my main regret.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you brought up fear because I think we're getting toward the end, so we might have to just do the relational part like on another
Yeah.
one of these. Maybe we'll get Scott in on this conversation. Um, but because I think Monday he'll be joining us. But the thing about fear that's interesting to me is like I definitely know it was fear for comics because I thought of myself as a cartoonist and I had this like vision and this fantasy of like what kind of cartoonist I was going to be. I was going to be like this Daniel Klausian type figure, he's doing cool indie comics and stuff. And the scary thing of putting something out there is you're actually putting skin in the game, and also you have to face reality at that point.
Yeah.
Like, are you Daniel Klaus? Like, are you like, are you Jeff Smith? Like, you're kind of maybe not, maybe, but you're kind of who you are, and you have to find your own voice. And a huge part of that is really just kind of overcoming that fear because like and this is where I'm 100% with you. I can't believe I had let fear kind of prevent me from doing it for so long. Because like the weird thing is by confronting the fear, it also gets you a lot quicker to the process of like discovering what your voice is as an artist, which is like a huge concern. You'll notice that like, I mean, I'm sure Cory probably sees this all the time, but like when I taught college, like that was a weird, very unique to college age artists problem.
Yeah.
And rarely meet like an older artist who's just like, I just don't know what my voice is.
Right.
Like what's my style? Like
Yeah.
I've never like the whole time I've been a part of the NCS, I've never had a conversation with someone in the NCS where they're like, what's my style? I'm just trying to find my style. Like,
Yeah.
what's my voice? They're all just trying to find time so they can put out cool stuff.
And voice and style and everything, that's a whole, we should do that as a topic as well. I'll write
Yeah,
that down here in a minute, but that's smokescreen, man. I
yeah,
feel like I have noticed this lately that that younger artists and younger creatives are not willing to put in the time to come up with an idea. They don't want to think. And I don't
yeah,
know if they're scared that, because I think execution is easy. It's hard and it's going to take decades to get good at it or whatever, but it's not a thinking thing. It's pretty easy. It's muscle memory. It's some of that stuff, right? And execution isn't that difficult. But like coming up with a composition, coming up with the idea, coming up with that type of thing, that's scary because then you have to confront the fact that you might not be creative because
yeah,
you haven't made the sacrifices to become creative. And so like
yeah,
I had this experience today, and we'll wrap this up here because we're both trying to end this quickly, but I had this experience today where I was with a student and they jumped right into the execution, and I said, no, listen, I'm not going to let you do this. Like let's take the time, right? Spend an hour, right? Spend an hour and just sketch as many possible ideas as you can. Just get word lists and mind maps and thumbnails. I want to see like 10 pages of crappy looking thumbnails of different ideas, right? Came back in an hour, 4 ideas, and they were all bad. And I was like, what happened to the last hour? And she's like, oh, well, let me show you what I did in the computer. And I was like, I told you not to get into the computer. I said, okay, we're going to just delete all those files. They're all worthless. Like you've jumped into execution too fast. I'm going to come back in another hour. I literally don't want you to do anything other than pencil to paper. Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she was like, oh man, he's just going to keep pushing me to do this. She had like 4 really good ideas out of the 20 that she thumbnailed in that hour. And I was like, okay, these 2 are really good. These 2 are okay with some development. I think it could be something. So you're allowed to do one of these 4. And it was great. It was kind of an interesting thing. And I don't know how much that has to do with fear. But I think deep down it might, because I hear a lot of students say, I didn't realize that coming up with ideas was so hard. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because you guys always just jump into the computer. It's like, well, let's get executing. Let's get working. Like you're not working if you're thinking about it or sketching it or whatever. So
yeah. No, it's a good point. And what's interesting is like that muscle memory is really important to build before you're in-house in a position where you don't have time to do all that sketching,
Right.
and you do trust your gut, and hopefully your first idea is your best.
Yeah.
And in a scenario like that, if you're like a student mindset where you're just like, I'm just going to draw like an arm because it's really cool to draw arms or something, then you have to justify that in front of salespeople. You're going to get eaten alive,
Right.
So building that skill of like creating just tons of like concepts and ideas and stuff like that. Anyhow, we're diverging to another topic,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think this one's still ripe for the picking. And then Scott in the chats said he will talk fear and regrets on Monday, so we'll probably
Cool.
continue this conversation, maybe get more into just some maybe approaches. Like I know for me, I'm just going to tease it a little bit, but I had a little bit of a toxic approach to competitiveness with other artists.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I had to learn the hard way. And we'll get into that a little bit in detail next week.
Yeah. And I'll tease something that I want to talk about. The idea of potential versus reality. The fear for me is that I can talk about good ideas that I've got, and without executing them, the potential is limitless. They could be the next Eisner, they could be the next Caldecott, right? But as soon as you execute and you put it out into the world, the reality is the reality, right? The results of what you get from your work are out there. They're fixed,
Yeah.
And well, not necessarily fixed, but you have to face the music rather than face the dream. And that's what kind of scares me. So even to this day, I'm like, if I put this out there, I spent 6 months of this. It might suck, but as long as I don't put it out there, I can just say, hey, this is one of the best things out there, or whatever. So it's kind of that thing. So yeah. So, and Scott said he's down. So we'll do that on Monday, and we'll wrap that up. So check back with us on Monday when we go and do a longer deep dive into fear and regret and how that kind of ties into art, competitiveness and potential versus reality and all that jazz. It'll be good discussion. And if you want to check out what we are working on here, you can go to quarterlystories.com and you can see those pages that Josh is inking and scanning and hand lettering. And if you want to check out my stuff, you can go to corykerr.com, recently updated with some of the more recent stickers and whatnot. And as always, this podcast is available at corykerr.com/48hr. And you guys have a good weekend, and we will see you in a couple days.
Bye. Leave us a 4-star review and like a nice review on iTunes. Bye.